There are a number of forces that make massive amounts of money on us being sick. And what I want people to know is that it doesn't have to be that way. That we have choice over our illness, that we have choice over how it progresses. And by being willing to do the deep personal work, to get in there and rip off the shell and find that heart that beats for a purpose, and to align that and allow that to come into our life, is to allow us to become well. When we fall too far off that path of our life, illness is the call to come back on. Who at 24 expects to get some crazy cancer that not only you're going to die from in a couple of years, but basically the type I had, you just kind of rot away. It starts with a little spot and then it like cuts in and it's almost like flesh-eating disease. It's horrible. So as I came into the medical system, it was, we're going to chemo you, and that's what we do. And it doesn't matter, even if our own science says that you shouldn't get chemo, we're just going to do it anyway. And we're not going to take the time to listen or explore the subtleties of your condition. So I hired an MD and brought a team together and started asking questions about how this cancer came about, what is it, who's working on it, what drugs are in process. I would either make one or help them to figure it out, which was actually a lot of fun. I started doing distance learning online, basically going to med school at nighttime when I wasn't at work running the business to fund the whole thing. And the more I dug into it, the more I learned that what I was being told by oncologists and the major media and mainstream information around cancer was very different than the truth. And what was really cool is I had these spots on my skin, and these were the cancer spots. These were these T cells that were replicating uncontrollably. And I could kind of watch the progression of the cancer. So as an idea came in and I tried something different, I could watch how they grew and how they changed and how they moved. So I could see these correlations between how I thought and how the cancer progressed. And as I went to the edge of medicine with really hardcore medical textbooks and really flaky, fluffy energy healing stuff, both of which were these two neighbors on opposite sides of the fence that just weren't playing well together to understand the full perspective, I started to see a greater truth emerging. And what I noticed had impact on the progression of my disease, and trying as many possible things as I could eventually gave me an understanding of how to slow the progression of my cancer and then achieve a full regression. It was this special gift that I had been given through the journey of my life. And I chose to leverage that and to make a research project out of this and to find a greater truth that I knew existed. The basic premise of perception medicine is the way in which we perceive ourself, the judgments, the relationship we have with self, and the way in which we see and relate to the world has a fundamental and inextricable link to our health. By changing the way in which we perceive ourselves and the world in a disease setting, we believe we can create more optimal outcomes. Whether that's a slight regression, or someone living longer, or some alleviation of symptoms, or a full spontaneous regression in the case of something crazy like cancer or MS in a short window terminal diagnosis. That's what we're going to work on. What I am most grateful for is there are a whole bunch of other people who have that same calling, and those people are coming to us to join us in whatever capacity they can to bring this truth to the world, not because it makes anybody any money, but because we all deserve to understand our ability to create wellness and joy and peace and healing in our lives. And so we've broken our mandate into a couple different components. One is to go back and study the literature on the phenomenon of spontaneous remission and to bring that into an online environment. The second thing we're going to do is collect people like me. People like me that showed up, that were supposed to die in a short period of time, that changed the way they thought and the way they existed in the world, and then it went away. The third project is to disseminate and identify how this healing occurs. What are the mechanisms that drive it? How do we look at a person as a whole being and draw and correlate the patterns and then apply those to an individual or to a group of people in a way that changes the overall outcome? How do we invent a new type of medicine? And how do we translate this into some form of working protocol that people can apply in their life to create the definitive work of how to create a spontaneous remission? And the coolest part is I know that it's possible. I don't know whether we'll get it right the first time, but I know that we'll be able to solve this without a shadow of a doubt.